Hey everybody, welcome back to Go Read Some Comics with me, Professor Jenna. It delights me to say that we are finally in the DCU. The first 2 episodes of Creature Commandos are now streaming on Max. As I made abundantly clear in the very first video that I made for this channel, I have been so excited for this show, and I feel like it is such a fully realized and really surprising way to kick off this new universe. I have so many thoughts just on the introduction of Themyscira and Cersei alone. There is so much that I'm excited to unpack through this whole season, but first and foremost, we have to talk about the bride. I really love that the bride is the first character whose flashbacks we get, both because it immediately adds another layer to Indira Varma's performance and because this show is able to ease people in with the cultural understanding of Bride of Frankenstein, before we expand out to some of the other lesser-known weirdos. Even then, I feel like the cultural understanding we do have of the bride is fascinating. Her aesthetic is everywhere, and studios have been really precious trying to get her story to work in a modern movie reboot context, which makes it even funnier to me that Poor Things basically did that last year and did it very, very successfully. But the character of the Bride of Frankenstein is arguably a footnote in Mary Shelley's original source material, and it takes even longer for her to appear in the 1935 movie than it does for Godzilla to appear in 2014's Godzilla. Both stories end with her being destroyed before she can even really become a person. In the novel, it's because Dr. Frankenstein is worried that she will help birth a new species of monsters, and in the movie, it's because Frankenstein's monster is upset that she rejected him. Her existing lore in DC is decidedly different and also somewhat fleeting. At the time I'm making this video, she only has a total of 30-something comic appearances to her name. Originally created by Grant Morrison and Doug Mahnke in 2006's Seven Soldiers Frankenstein #3, the first version of the bride replaces screaming at Eric Frankenstein with politely dumping him, arguing that he's not her type. She then travels across Earth to find herself, only to be brainwashed, mutilated, and passed off as the reincarnation of Kali, the Hindu goddess of destruction. This is how she gets her forearm silhouette that she's normally known for, something that I am totally fine not having in the DCU, both for the cultural optics and because it'll make her a little bit easier to theoretically portray in live action. She then joins the secret government agency SHADE, or Superhuman Advanced Defense Executive, reluctantly fighting alongside Eric on a couple of supernatural threats. A few years later, the New 52 completely rewrote the bride's origin story, likely thing for the New 52 to do. This time around, in Frankenstein Agent of SHADE, she loved Eric and tried to start a family with him, only for their relationship to fall apart when Eric seemingly kills their violent and mutated son. Of course, because it's comics, it's later revealed that their son is very much alive, but the bride ends up killing him anyway after discovering how much he's suffering. She then quits SHADE and has largely vanished from DC storytelling ever since, outside of the occasional one-shot and one arc of Rebirth-era Superman. The bride's origin story in Creature Commandos takes all of this, throws it into a blender, and then still seasons it into something unique, which is what I love about James Gunn's approach to characters. As he said in The Hollywood Reporter in the lead up to the series, quote, "We took elements of what the DC Frankenstein has been as this mercenary, but we also took a lot of things from Mary Shelley's original Frankenstein for both the bride and for Frankenstein, and we put them together in a way that added some other interesting elements. But I love Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and part of the real fun for me was playing with that canon in the same way that we're playing with the DC canon." We get her not having feelings for Eric, and we get a very passionate fling between her and Victor Frankenstein, something that was played up a little bit in 1985's The Bride and in 1994's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. There is a bit of the born sexy yesterday trope, which Pop Culture Detective defined in 2017 in a very excellent video essay. It's basically when adult female characters, often artificially created in genre fiction, are initially shown to be naive and nubile and needing to rely on the men that are around them. But across episode 2, the bride's story begins to subvert this. Her feelings and her actions towards Victor are a genuine choice, almost more so than if she had awoken and immediately hitched herself to Eric. The decision to portray Eric as entitled and meat-headed makes this even better to me, because even though we might have sympathy for the larger cultural myth of Frankenstein, any woman can recognize why the bride is right to reject him. He's a jealous suitor in every single sense, not knowing how to take a hint and leave the woman of his affections alone, just with the added fantastical bent of killing her lover and then literally chasing her throughout history. I also have to say, I loved that montage, and I cannot wait to watch it at half speed and see what else it tells us about this fully fleshed out DCU. Ultimately, the bride's origin story works for me because it gives her mythos a modern update while still feeling timeless. I'm gonna be honest, it's frustrating being a woman in a world whose bodily autonomy and agency are not always guaranteed, and are too often at the mercy of the men that are around you. Just like with another one of Gunn's characters, the bride.
It has to get made!
And she clearly moves through the world a little cynical and closed off and extremely nonchalant towards authority. And without getting too heavy into spoilers, the ending of episode 2 kind of proves her point, in a way. Still, that sets her up to potentially be changed for the better in whatever grand narrative the DCU has for her, in Creature Commandos and beyond. And whatever that change is, it's something that can happen of her own volition, and not just as an extension of the men around her. It's the kind of arc that she hasn't quite had in the comics yet, and it makes me excited to see what other storylines are in store for this group of weirdos. What did you think of the first 2 episodes of Creature Commandos? How do you feel about its approach to the bride so far? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. You can follow me on social media at @HeyIt'sJennaLynn, and please check out my podcast Phase Hero if you want to hear me yap even more. And as always, go read some comics.